the kind of town where everybody knows your business before you do. That's where I grew up. Small streets, big mouths, and family gatherings that felt less like celebrations and more like performance reviews. I'm 57 years old. I've lived a quiet life by choice, not by accident. Most people in my family never understood the difference. My younger brother, I'll call him my brother because that's all he ever really was to me, a label. He was the one who could fill a room. Loud laugh, firm handshake, always the first to pour the drinks and the last to offer to pay for them. He married young, bought a house in the same zip code where we were raised, coached his son's little league team. The whole picture. Our mother used to say he was the one who landed right. I moved away when I was 29. Took a job in a different city, packed my car on a Tuesday morning, and didn't look back. I came home for holidays when I could. When I couldn't, I called. It wasn't bitterness that made me leave. I just needed room to breathe that didn't smell like everyone else's expectations. The trouble with leaving is that people freeze you in time. Back home, I was still the younger one who hadn't figured it out yet. The one who bounced between jobs in his 20s, the one who was still finding himself when finding yourself was supposed to stop at 30. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every 4th of July cookout, I walked back into that role like I was putting on an old coat I never asked for. My brother was good at reminding me it still fit. It started small, the way things like that always do. A comment, here. A look there, the kind of thing you'd sound crazy repeating to anyone outside the family. Just joking. You're so sensitive. Can't you take a little ribbing? I could take it. I took it for years. I sat at those tables and ate the food and smiled and nodded and let it wash over me because the alternative was a scene. And I didn't do scenes. That was his department. The reunion that changed things happened on Labor Day weekend 2 summers ago. My uncle on my mother's side had bought a lake house in Michigan years back, and every few years the whole extended family made the drive out. Cousins I hadn't seen since high school. Aunts who still pinched cheeks, the usual. I made the 4-hour drive alone, arrived on a Friday evening, and told myself it would be fine. It was fine until Saturday afternoon. We were out on the back deck. Someone had set up a folding table with cold beer and a cooler, and the kids were down at the dock, and the sun was doing that thing it does in August, where it sits low and golden and makes everything look a little better than it is. My cousin's husband was talking about real estate. My aunt was talking about her garden, normal enough. My brother was talking about me, not to me. That was always how he operated. He'd position himself slightly away from you, angle his body toward the crowd, and deliver his commentary to the room. Let everyone else react. That way, if you pushed back, you were the one making a scene. 57 years old, he said, loud enough for the table to hear. Never settled down, still renting from what I understand. He shook his head with this slow, theatrical sadness, like he was describing a natural disaster. Must be hard, not having something to show for it all those years. He looked at me then. Just briefly, just enough to make sure I'd heard. My cousin laughed. Not meanly, I don't think she even caught the edge in it. My aunt made a little sound, something between a sigh and a subject change. My brother lifted his beer. I looked out at the lake. I didn't say anything. I hadn't said anything the last time, or the time before that. Silence was something I'd gotten good at. Not the weak kind of silence that means you don't have an answer. The other kind. I picked up my drink and walked down to the dock and sat with my feet over the water, and I stayed there until dinner. That night, lying in the guest room with the window cracked and the sound of frogs coming off the water, I thought about all the things I'd never told them. Not because I was ashamed, because I genuinely hadn't felt the need. Here's what my family didn't know about me. I had started a small logistic consulting firm 17 years earlier, right around the time my brother was buying his first house, and our mother was quietly worrying about me over the phone. I'd grown it slowly, the right way, without shortcuts. By the time of that Labor Day reunion, we had 23 employees, a solid roster of mid-sized regional clients, and a line of credit I'd never needed to touch. I owned my home outright. A house outside of Columbus, 3 bedrooms, good bones, nothing flashy. I had a retirement account that would have surprised even my financial advisor when I first walked in. I had a life I'd built board by board in a city nobody in my family ever visited. And I had a wife. Her name was June, not the June on anybody's list. A woman I'd met at a conference in Indianapolis 11 years ago. We married quietly, courthouse, 2 witnesses, dinner at a place we liked. We didn't do a big announcement. We didn't send cards. We just got married and went home and kept living. No kids by choice. Ours mutually agreed upon early in the relationship. We traveled instead. We had a dog named Biscuit who slept at the foot of the bed and destroyed exactly 1 shoe per year, always from a different pair, always the left one. I had not hidden any of this from my family to be dramatic. I had not been playing some long game. I just stopped needing their approval at some point, and with it, stopped feeling the need to file reports. My mother knew I was doing okay. I'd told her enough. The rest of them filled in whatever story suited them, and I let them. But lying in that guest room in Michigan, I thought, maybe silence isn't always the same as peace. I drove home Sunday morning, got back to Columbus by noon, and told my wife about the deck comment over lunch. She put her fork down. She has a way of going very still when she's deciding whether to be concerned or angry. How many times is this? She said. I counted in my head, more than I can track at this point. She nodded slowly. Okay, she said, and went back to her lunch. She didn't tell me what to do. That's not how she operates. But I could feel something shift, the way pressure shifts before a storm. 7 weeks after the reunion, my brother called. Not a text, not an email. A call on a Thursday evening, which was unusual enough that I stood there looking at the name on my phone for a moment before I answered. He sounded different, not the deck version of him. Smaller. Hey, he said. You got a few minutes? I said I did. He went through it in pieces the way people do when they're embarrassed. His business, he'd been running a small landscaping and lawn care operation for about 12 years, had hit a rough stretch. He'd taken on a commercial contract 2 years ago, a big one, and borrowed against it to buy equipment. The contract fell through after the second season. The company that hired him folded. He was left holding the equipment loan, a line of credit he'd tapped harder than he should have, and 2 months of payroll he was scrambling to cover. He needed $60,000. He didn't say it that way at first. He circled around it for about 8 minutes, and I just let him circle. Then he said the number. I didn't react. I let the silence sit for a moment. How soon? I said. 2 weeks, maybe 3, before the bank meeting. Okay, I said. Let me think about it. I'll call you in a few days. He seemed surprised I hadn't said no immediately. He thanked me, which was awkward, and we hung up. I sat at my desk for a while after that call. My wife was in the other room. I could hear the television. Here's what I knew. $60,000 would not break me. I could write that check and feel it, but I could do it. And I knew, because I knew him, had known him my whole life, that he had nowhere else to turn. Our parents were gone. His wife's family didn't have that kind of money. He'd leveraged everything he had. And I also knew what he'd said on that deck in Michigan, with the sun going golden and everyone sitting around nodding. I spent 2 days thinking about it. I talked it through with my wife, not to get permission, but because she thinks clearly when I get tangled up in old feelings. You can help him, she said. That's one thing. Whether you do it without conditions is another thing. I called him back on a Saturday morning. I'm not going to give you $60,000, I said. Silence. I'm going to give you 20, and I'm going to help you restructure the rest. I know people who work in small business lending. I'll make some calls, but I need you to sit across from me and go through your books, and I need you to hear some things from me first. More silence. Then, okay, we'll do this in person, I said. Come to Columbus. He showed up the following Thursday. I picked him up from the hotel. I'd offered him the guest room and he'd declined, which told me something, and drove him to my house. He went quiet when he pulled into the driveway. It's not a mansion. I want to be clear about that. It's a solid house on a good street with a 2-car garage and a maple tree in the front yard that I've watched grow for 12 years, but it's paid for and it looks it. There's a kind of settled confidence to a house that doesn't owe anything to anyone. My wife was inside. She greeted him warmly. She is better at that than I am, and brought out coffee. My brother sat at the kitchen table and looked around with an expression I'd never seen on him before, like he was doing math in his head and the numbers kept coming out wrong. Nice place, he said. Thank you, I said. We spent the morning going through his books. It was worse than he'd described on the phone, the way these things usually are, but not unfixable. I made 2 calls that afternoon, got him a contact at a regional lender I'd worked with before, and walked him through what he'd need to bring to the meeting. Before dinner, I said the thing I'd been carrying since Michigan. I didn't do it with anger. I want to be clear about that too, because I've replayed it enough times to know it matters. I wasn't looking to humiliate him. I wasn't keeping score. I just said it plainly, the way I'd learned to say hard things over the years. At the lake house, I said, what you said about nothing to show for it. He looked at his hands. I've let a lot of things go over the years because I didn't want to fight. But I want you to understand something. I built this. I gestured, not specifically at the house, but at everything. The life, the business, the 23 years of choices. Quietly, without asking anyone's permission or waiting for anyone's approval. And I don't need you to be impressed by it, but I need you to stop treating me like a cautionary tale in front of people I grew up with. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he said, I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said. That's on me, some of it. My wife had made pot roast. We ate. It was a little awkward in the way that honest conversations always leave things a little awkward, but it wasn't bad. My brother asked about the business. I told him broadly. He asked about my wife, how we'd met. I told him that too. 11 years, he said. And nobody knew. You never asked, I said. None of you asked how I actually was. You just assumed. He nodded, slowly. Yeah, he said. I know. He left the next morning. I drove him back to the hotel and we sat in the parking lot for a few minutes before he got out. I'm sorry, he said, for what it's worth, the lake house. All of it. It's worth something, I said. We'll see. The lender meeting went fine. He got a modified loan, not the full amount he needed, but enough to restructure, to sell one piece of equipment, to keep 2 of his employees on. The business is still running. He's working it differently now, smaller contracts, nothing he can't cover if it falls through. He texts sometimes. Short messages. How's things? How's the dog? I text back. It's not the relationship either of us might have wanted growing up, but it's real now in a way it wasn't before, which counts for something. My aunt, the one from the lake house, called me last spring. She'd heard from my brother that I was married, that I had a business, that I'd apparently been doing fine for a long time. She laughed a little on the phone, not meanly, just surprised. Why didn't you ever tell us? She said. I thought about how to answer that. I'd had this conversation in my head many times, and it never came out cleanly. I stopped waiting for the right moment, I finally said, and then the moments kept passing. She was quiet for a second. Well, she said, we should have asked. Yes, I said. You should have. That's it. That's the whole story, or most of it. I'm still in Columbus. My wife is still better at warmth than I am. Biscuit destroyed the left sneaker off a pair of hiking boots last November, keeping his streak alive. The maple tree in the front yard is taller than it was. The business is doing well. We took on 2 new clients this year, both referrals, which is the only kind I trust. I go to family gatherings sometimes, when they feel worth the drive. It's different now. Not because I walked in and announced anything, not because I made a speech or proved a point, just because I stopped pretending to be the person they'd decided I was. When you stop performing the role, eventually people have to look at who's actually standing there. It takes a while. Families are slow like that, but they come around.